This probably will be the most hated video I've ever made, but fuck it, here goes nothing. I've always been baffled by the sheer amount of praise Mushoku Tensei receives, and it's not because of the reasons you may assume. Obviously, Mushoku Tensei is still a controversial anime because of its problematic elements. No, my issue with Mushoku Tensei really has to do with its fanbase defense of those elements. Mainly, how many people like to point out that the series portrays Rudeus as a disgusting person on purpose, in that it's all part of Rudeus' redemption arc and character development. I find that a very weak defense, and here's why. First thing first, another YouTuber smarter than me has already pointed out that Mushoku Tensei is not trying to be a redemption arc. It's simply a story about a neat otaku loser getting a chance to live a fulfilling life because he wasted his first one. A chance not to just run away from his problems and live a life he can be proud of. There's nothing wrong with that inherently, but it nullifies the defense for all of Rudeus' behavior that people find uncomfortable. If the story is not really about Rudeus redeeming himself to become a better person, then his perverted actions aren't something he needs to improve on. In fact, the story doesn't even punish him for his perverted actions. It's mainly just comic relief and fan service. Therefore, it's hard to believe that the story can justify Rudy's behavior with the argument that it's supposed to be a redemption arc. For the record, I do not have any issue with Mushoku Tensei's usage of fan service or Rudeus' behavior necessarily. If I did, I would be a hypocrite considering the type of videos I make. I generally view it as par for the course when it comes to anime of this genre. The problem I have is people trying to justify it as a necessary part of Rudeus' redemption arc when there isn't one in the first place. To be fair, there is one of Rudeus' flaws that does get addressed in the story, which could be argued as part of Rudeus' supposed redemption arc. I suspect that this topic doesn't get brought up as much because it's not a topic that elicits strong reaction or outrage compared to the sexual stuff, and that topic is about how overly confident Rudeus is on how to live his new fantasy life because of how much of an otaku he is. By that I mean how he expects things to go his way just because he's aware of all the tropes and cliches from all of the otaku media he has consumed in his previous life. This character flaw is not explicitly mentioned, but it's implied throughout his inner monologue, along with how he views other characters as mere archetypes in the beginning. Him calling Roxy the legal lolly, him screaming about how money can't buy dere when saving Eris, his comment after the first attempt to have sex, and the whole ordeal with trying to improve Ruger's reputation. These examples all stem from Rudeus' subconscious view that his new life works exactly like any other fantasy worlds he has come to expect. Consequently, he tends to be overly confident about the correct course of actions, which eventually blows up in his face later on. The first instance of this occurs when Rudeus comes up with a plan to stage a fake kidnapping of Eris to gain her trust and improve their relationship. However, this plan backfires when it turns out the kidnappers do plan to kidnap Eris for real. This results in Rudeus almost getting killed if it wasn't for Gridlane saving them at the end. For the very first time, Rudeus is terrified of the prospect of dying and, for a moment, acknowledges the gravity of the situation. He wasn't merely role-playing like in those RPGs he used to play. It was as real of a life as his previous one, where death is very much a possibility. This example ultimately demonstrates Rudeus' false sense of confidence due to his almost naive perception. Since Rudeus believes he needs to heroically save Eris from danger in order to make her less Sun and more Tere, he puts everybody in danger, including himself. Even with how foolproof or clever he believes his plan is, he never accounts for the possibility that others would act outside of his calculations. Although he was able to somewhat accomplish his goal and gets closer to Ares this time, the same positive outcome won't manifest the next time he makes this mistake. The second instant is perhaps my favorite moment of the entirety of Mushoku Tensei thus far. The scene in which Rudius stops Ruijerd from saving the young adventurers too early in order to improve their party's reputation, as well as Ruijerd's. Regardless, this ends horribly with one of the youngsters killed, which goes against everything Ruijerd stands for. Rudius himself is also devastated over this fatal blunder, despite thinking it was a perfect plan just a moment ago. This causes a falling out between Rudius and Ruijerd for the rest of episode 11 until they reconcile at the end. Admittedly, Rudius' decision stems from his genuine desire to help his comrades and not because of some selfish scheme. Ruijerd even recognizes this as he forgives Rudius for seeing his resolve to protect Ares no matter what. At the same time, it was never a guarantee that saving the kids sooner or later would make a significant difference in their reputation. This goes back to Rudius' arrogance influenced by his flawed mindset about the fantasy world. Just because he knows how these stories usually go, doesn't mean he will always save the day. This is what I believe to be the only argument for Mushoku Tensei being a redemption arc story for Rudius. This ordeal with Ruijerd makes Rudius realize that his comrades are more than just NPCs he needs to take care of, rather as actual people he can rely on. This is exactly what I love about the show that everyone else rarely mentions when it comes to defending it. Nonetheless, it still fails to live up to my expectations right after the first half of season 1. Afterwards, Rudius' journey as a character feels like it has come to a halt. Of course, there are moments like the Paul reunion or the meeting with Aisha that show some glimpses into Rudius' character growth. Even so, those moments serve as more of Paul's character development and Aisha's introduction respectively. Henceforth, we won't get another major moment for Rudius until the aftermath of Turning Point 2. I won't comment any further on his character in Season 2, since I have not watched all of it yet. But feel free to comment down below on why everything I said is wrong because I haven't watched Season 2 yet. Though I don't think I really need to discuss any future events to argue my main point. Mushoku Tensei may highlight Rudius' overconfidence due to his otaku mindset, but not enough for the story to be considered a proper redemption arc like others have claimed. The reason being that it's not a flaw that's egregious enough to warrant a full-on redemption. This particular flaw doesn't even make him as malicious or selfish as a character like BoJack Horseman, for example. His arc about overconfidence and warped perception only really qualifies as normal character development. Therefore, it would have been more of a redemption arc if his worst flaw does get addressed. His unchecked perversion and sexual degeneracy are flaws that do warrant a redemption arc under normal circumstances. The problem is that the world of Mushoku Tensei doesn't even have issues with Rudy's behavior. Everybody in this world is a sexual demon. Paul's implied to be similar to Rudius in his early days. Ares' grandfather straight up has sex with the beast people. Ares' father encourages Rudius to take girls his age to do stuff with them. Roxy likes to watch others masturbate, and this elf woman just speaks for herself. Sexuality isn't really viewed in the same way as it is here in our world. Plus, a lot of his behavior is overlooked because to every other character, he's just a little boy going through puberty. Indeed, there are characters like Lilia who's creeped out by Rudius at first, or Aisha who calls him a total pervert when they first meet. Then again, Lilia begins to respect Rudius after Paul's cheating incident, and Aisha ends up liking Rudius way more than Norn does. Since the story itself doesn't even punish or care about his perverted nature, why should we believe it's about him overcoming those flaws? Why should we be convinced that Rudius knows his behavior is wrong when the entire Mushoku world justifies it? I want to emphasize that I do not hate Mushoku Tensei. Trust me, I'm not that kind of ReZero fan. Mushoku Tensei has so much going for it that I understand why it's such a beloved series. The art and animation are beautiful. The world building is admittedly well thought out, and the sense of wonder and adventure is what really stands out compared to most other isekais I've seen. The problem is perhaps how baffled I am with its reputation among its die-hard fans, and none of them has given any persuasive argument on Mushoku Tensei's supposed greatness. On the other hand, the haters all hate the series because of the same boring reason that I don't really care for. Hence, I made this video to finally put my thoughts out there and see where this discussion/debate goes. Feel free to comment your counter arguments down below. Please do. I'm genuinely curious. Also, stick to anime only stuff because I believe an animated adaptation should be able to stand at its own piece without requiring additional context from its source material. Maybe if I read the light novel, I'll think it is the greatest story of all time. Otherwise, thank you for watching, and remember, I'm Justapun. Nothing more, nothing less. Also, I lie, I'm definitely that kind of ReZero fan. Fuck you, fuck this show. ReZero's a million times better. Get fucked!